Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Amanda Wall. I am the Communications Director at Clackamas Workforce Partnership. Welcome to Reentry 102. I am going to take a minute to kind of introduce everyone in the room. We'll popcorn around. Let's start with Michelle. We'll start with you, and then Michelle, why don't you call on someone next to introduce themselves? The question I have is explain what you do, what services you have available to individuals reentering in and out of prison or jail.
Okay. So I am Michelle Ellers. I am a person with lived experience. And so my reentry journey started as a transition clerk while I was inside Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. And I start there because I still hold as many of the roles I held while I was at Coffee Creek. I was really able to do and hold a lot of positions that had never been held before. So I am currently on the steering committee for the Governor Advocacy Panel, but I became a member of that panel as an adult in custody. I also represented the minimum facility as an adult in custody and had monthly meetings with the exec team, the release counselors, the transition coordinators, and really weighed in on like what was happening in reentry at the DOC, and I still continue to do those things today. I left Coffee Creek as the first internal hire of Opportunity Oregon with Nancy Pants. And so I've been a reentry support specialist since day one. I also am credentialed in peer support and work as a full-time employee at Live Grow Share. So I hold a caseload of justice-involved individuals, many that are navigating reentry, some that are currently have open cases. You know, it kind of just depends. And I support many women with child welfare cases that are navigating reentry. So my services are kind of individually based, I would say. I'm a key advocate for wraparound services because I am actually kind of just coming out of reentry myself. I paroled on January 6th of 2025, so I've only been back in the community for 16 months. I'm technically still on parole, so I also have walked this, right? And so my goal is to try to like close up the gaps, talk about how I've been able to be so successful. So my lived experience is really some of the biggest advocacy and service I provide to my current clients. I've also been privileged to be able to go back into the facilities. We were at TRCI yesterday doing a career fair. So I was sitting with transition coordinators, release counselors, AICs, all of it, right? Talking about the success, weighing in on the new job descriptions for release counselors, weighing in on the new model that's about to be released at the Department of Corrections for reentry, and then talking about what's successful. So identifying each individual plan, talking foundation, what do they have when they come out? How do this huge collaboration of us that have been successful weigh in on each person and understand that our path is not everybody's path, and getting them connected with the collaboration of services is really probably the biggest thing that I do. So we now have a referral platform and Opportunity Oregon to get medical appointments set up, mental health appointments set up. I have a partner community agency for people coming out on the MAT or MODE program because so many people are coming out under that model, but they haven't really seen it as a harm reduction model, which it was actually designed for. So like revisiting what that looks like. Do they need sub services? Is it more mental health? What is the co-occurring? What does their housing look like? Is it safe? What does their support system look like? And then what is the plan, you know? And then we build from there. And so that's how I got into this. Obviously, it's a passion because of my experience. And I just keep going on any platform that I can share. Because like I said, I was awarded a lot of different things that many others behind me haven't. And I feel like if they had more opportunities like what I had, we could have a lot more success. And I'm a firm believer that reentry begins once you enter into the facility, to inspire hope and have goals and stepping stone plans, to kind of get you focused on like the end goal of coming home. And we get lost in that when we go in on intake. And it's so critical to know that when you have an out date, every day counts, right? And so we really need to work towards reentry from the second we get there.
Great. That's great. Let's see. Taryn, why don't you go next?
Sure, make me follow, Michelle. That was such a good
I'm
introduction.
sorry I didn't call on anybody.
No, you're
Yes,
totally fine. And this is a very accepting, warm space. We're all here. We're all doing the same things. I totally appreciate what you said, Michelle, about that village too, right? You left a really not so great village, and the worst thing from what I understand from my lived experience on my end is when you exit, if you end up right back in that village, the likelihood of causing same kind of crimes, same kind of, issues, same kind of codependency or rehabilitation, it doesn't work very well. So that new village that you exit out to is super, super important. Go ahead.
Okay, I am Taryn Vanderpyle. I'm a professor at Western Oregon University in the criminal justice sciences, and my focus is on corrections. I am also the co-founder of the Transformative Justice Community, under which we have three programs. Our first program started in 2021, and it's called Regroup. It's a mutual aid group of folks who have spent any time incarcerated anywhere in the state for any crime, whatever, however long they've been out. We don't care. We just come alongside one another and help one another with this next chapter. We also have the Resilience Project that is based in Salem and focuses on kids in schools, providing mentoring and tutoring services, especially kids who have been impacted by familial incarceration or gang violence. And then our third program is the one of which I am the director, and it's called CREW, which is Connecting Resources to Empower Women. We focus solely on Coffee Creek, and we just started this in 2025. We started the bulk of our work in September. We've grown from coming alongside two women in September to now 75% of the women who are releasing, and we've gotten to come alongside and celebrate with over 150 women so far. We offer safe rides to anyone who needs it, safe rides to a safe place. We don't want women released to a bus stop ever again. There's nothing okay about that. We will also provide a duffel bag full of clothing that was selected just for her, a bag full of full-size hygiene products that are different than what she can access inside the prison because we want all the smells to be different, and we want full size because travel size can be triggering for somebody who's been trafficked. We provide a folder full of resources for the county to which she is releasing. And we also will provide free tattoo cover-ups of sex trafficking or gang-related tattoos or the name of an abusive ex. I've been shocked how many men think they need to put their name across a woman's throat. His name doesn't belong anywhere on her body. She is not property. So we will help that get covered up. We've got, I want to say, six tattoo artists now across the state who offer free or discounted tattoo cover-ups, and we've got funding for that as well. We do some interventions inside as well, and we're trying to grow that. Right now, we've got a book club. It's a great book club that meets every week, and I've really loved participating in that. We're writing a curriculum for healing from trauma. We want to make women, help women become less vulnerable to those who seek to cause them harm. And inside the prison, the interventions that we have found so far are more about what have you done to others than rather than what has been done to you. And that needs to be addressed as well. We've also got a program called Roots and Wings that helps people prepare for reentry and looks more at the psychological and relational aspects of reentry beyond the very important things like jobs and housing and all of that. Our big goal for 2026 that depends on funding, as everything does, is to open a release center in Wilsonville for women. We have a space selected. We just need the money, as always. That is a mile from the prison, and no matter what direction she is headed, it's on her way. We want her to be able to come and pick out her own clothing, her own hygiene, stock up on some food, meet with a mentor, whatever she needs. Just have this sort of soft landing in this gigantic release experience. And for women who are staying in the area, then we'd be able to offer ongoing support through, workshops, say a self-defense class, a budgeting workshop, parenting workshops, a craft night. Bring your kids, we'll get pizza, just just chill and be around some people who get it, and you can let your guard down for a little bit. So that's our big goal right now, and we just keep plowing forward. Gas prices with safe rides, I'm sure you can imagine, are an issue right now. So that's our big focus is trying to get support for our volunteers doing those rides. So we've got a lot going on. I will go ahead and bounce to Sally.
Hello, I'm Sally Borozak. I am here on behalf of Goodwill Industries of Columbia Willamette, which is the vocational side of Goodwill. I work for Job Connection. We are a free service that works one-on-one with people with barriers to employment. And so, in relation to kind of what we're talking about today, we meet people where they're at and really work closely to make sure that we're setting them up with second chance employers. We hold two second chance job fairs a year, getting people connected with employers that don't do background checks or yeah, that are second chance. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I feel like I haven't talked. And anywho, we help with clothing cards and clothing for interviews and new jobs. And yeah, we're kind of just an all-around job search service for people in need. And a big boundary is reentry because, especially just what I've noticed in Clackamas County, it sometimes can be very difficult. And so being a support of Clackamas County is really important to us.
And last but not least, Deputy O'Connor, welcome.
Hello, my name is Chris O'Connor. I've been a patrol deputy at the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for going on 19 years. Um, Most of my career I've spent in those areas where we are going to come across the people being affected by the things we're talking about today. Homelessness and low level offenses that would um, yield some kind of response other than just jail time. I would say my services tend to be the opposite of you guys, more on the front end of things. Um, we do have diversion, when the drugs became legal and then readjusted to back illegal to some degree. There was some programs put in place there that sorry, I have somebody bothering me here. um, some diversion programs that could help on the front end of things. Follow the program, and the charges could be dealt with in a different way. And then I can get further into that when it's my turn.
Sure. Well, welcome everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you all very much for that overview. So we'll go in the same order. My next question to everyone is, what is one thing you always share with each person you work with and why? So it's the one thing that you focus on or tidbit of wisdom. I mean, it can be as silly as, what is your favorite ice cream, right? Like, what is the one thing that you just always share when you work with a person? For me personally, when I'm at Clean Slate Clackamas and I'm doing expungement work, at the end, I do checkout. And I most often say to the individual, congratulations, today is a really good day. Because the idea of them being told yes, that this may actually happen, that their record may be sealed, is a very good day. It's a very positive point in their life. And so I always try to say, congratulations, today is a good day. Today was a yes day. So those are the types of things that I try to say to an individual who is coming into Clean Slate extremely nervous and very apprehensive about this actually even happening. So that's what I do. So Michelle, go ahead.
Usually probably I would say the most common thing I say is just to be relatable. So like, I've been where you are, like relinquish all that, what we call the inmate rumor system, because we all like to get together and talk about what you can and cannot do. And just tell me what you want. Who are you, and just give them that autonomy to try to identify who they are and like where they want to go in life. And then try to figure out, how to best support them and walk beside them.
I love that.
Sharon?
It's so important. One of the things that we get to do with crew is to go in and meet with women who have connected with us, meet with them before they release. It's been my experience that they're not used to people showing up and just giving them things and loving on them with no catch. So my favorite thing that I get to say is yes,
Mhm.
we'll be there. You need a ride? Yes. You need clothes? Yes. You need hygiene? Yes. We've got it. We will be there at the gate. You matter. You are worth it. There, it's not too good to be true. You don't owe us anything in return. There is no catch. We got you.
Sally?
I feel like one of the things I say often is you got to start somewhere. And so when people come in not wanting or, nervous about having to talk about their past or, doing a resume that they may not have work history because of incarceration, I always just kind of focus on you have to start somewhere and we're just moving forward at this point. So everyone has a start over point, and so that's kind of where I start with people.
And Chris?
I would say, Shelby isn't. I have a couple scenarios that kind of like Shelby's story. So I would say that I kind of lend to those stories, letting them know that, yeah, of course, with me in this uniform, I look like, the guy that can really put a damper on their life, but also understand there's the other side of things and, compassion and whatnot that can help out to help start that way to reentry.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I really like that. Those are good things. All very similar, which is interesting, right? Okay, so the next question I have is an interesting one given funding, right? We're all struggling with funding. Funding is a scary word. Why do you think it is important we continue to invest in and support reentry work?
Well, this affects every aspect of our community. These are people that are coming home. These are our neighbors. This is our workforce. It impacts every aspect when you're talking about homelessness, addiction, safety. Um, Taryn is doing such amazing work to, help women get out of the sex traffic trade and like other things like that. Like this is how we shift community and culture. And because we have leadership within the Department of Corrections in Oregon right now that supports a lot of our missions, it's critical now that we are investing in building out the programs and getting it from inside to outside, right? Because we also need the people within that are going to experience reentry to really relinquish some old belief systems and really be invested in the fact that there's reentry and people out here that care and offer those services, and we want them to participate. We don't care what you did, we care what you're going to do, is kind of like the aspect that I take it. Check all those charges at the door. We work with everybody. It doesn't matter. No one's relinquished. And then when you're looking at OISC and all those sentence calculations and people that have been in prison over 30 years getting immediate releases, there's nothing more disheartening than a man sitting across my desk that's never held a cell phone and says, "What do I do? What do I do?" We're failing these people that are like now coming back into the community. What are they supposed to do? So there's got to be some technology skills. There's got to be really looking at the individual and where they're at. Everybody's at a different level when they come out, regardless of the time, how they were raised. There's so many factors that go into each individual. So we have to invest in the range. We have to invest in where they're at and like what those needs are. And technology for people that have been incarcerated for extended periods of time continues to come up. So that was something that I failed to mention in the beginning too, as we're looking at that as well and having really deep conversations, because you cannot get a job. You cannot apply for things. Everything is online today, and building resumes and cover letters and being able to follow up. And I don't know how many times I've had somebody just hand me a cell phone and be like, "I don't even know what to do with this."
I mean,
And so, yeah, so investment in every level, right?
Mhm.
Mental health, medical, as somebody that's personally walking through some pretty serious medical needs right now because of things that weren't done for me at Coffee Creek specifically. It's even widened my scope of why reentry is so important at every piece of their life. We don't take care of ourselves when we're out there in addiction, and just the weight of the world and the trauma that happens. It's key if we want to shift communities and be successful and watch people really develop and break generational cycles. We have to continue to invest in reentry. We just have to.
I mean, there's 4 million plus people in the state of Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And about 1 million of them have a record. And, if 1 in 4 are being affected in this state, the ROI is there right then, right? That is 1 million individuals that need to be in employment or in a better housing situation or need medical attention. And yet the investments are just not there to help get that individual out of that cycle, right? And so 1 in 4 right there is a key reason to invest. Karen, your thoughts?
We have a tendency, a very natural tendency to respond to harm with anger and fear and punishment. If we responded in a different way, it would actually save us money. And I think we get lost in that. We continue to invest in punishment rather than investing in rehabilitation. Wouldn't it be amazing if we invested in the people who have caused harm and we focus on accountability? That's important. And rehabilitation. How do you face what has happened and make sure it doesn't happen again? And wouldn't it be incredible if Chris was so bored because there just wasn't enough crime out there for him to deal with? His role is very important. We're always going to need law enforcement, but wouldn't it be neat if they didn't have to worry about understaffing, the prisons didn't have to worry about understaffing, because we have directed enough funding into the things that actually do increase public safety in the long run.
I mean, the same is about fines and fees. We have so many individuals that come in through our clinics facing thousands and thousands of dollars of fines and fees. And I understand there are reasons behind fines and fees, but it ends up costing counties more to chase after those fines and fees than it does the actual fines and fees. And so if you turn it into some sort of other way to, like you're saying, invest in the individual instead of just fining them for their crimes, I do see a benefit in all of that, right? Sally, go ahead.
I think I am piggybacking on kind of what everyone has said so far, but it's I it's really important to break the cycle, I feel like, and with that, it takes a village mentality. I think it's really important to have these type of services or just have these conversations to make sure that people have the tools that they're needing and in order to succeed and not just repeat the same cycles.
Chris, thoughts?
Kind of along with what Taryn was saying about rehabilitation. I kind of feel like I was spinning my wheels if I was just out here doing the enforcement side of things, and then the rehabilitation part was never a factor. We would just be going in this vicious cycle. The same people committing these crimes would, if they're not getting any services, they would just re-enter society and just keep doing the same thing over and over again without any kind of involvement. So I do believe that the rehabilitation side of things is very important to stop the recidivism. Obviously recidivism is a real thing. And some of these things, like Shelby, he just kind of needed a helping hand to get the ball rolling. A lot of these folks want to do something. They don't want to live in the cycle that they're living in. They have no idea where to turn to. So
yeah, it is important. Thank you for that. Okay, the next question is kind of 2 parts. So what is one thing you want providers? So thinking in terms of the audience that we're giving this video to, what is one thing you want providers to know when working with justice involved individuals? So what's kind of one piece of advice that you would give other providers on the front line with working with individuals who are justice involved? And then what are 1 or 2 things you wish reentry coordinators were doing more of? So the system that you are presenting to, what is one thing you wish you were seeing more of out of reentry coordinators and system navigators and benefits navigators and individuals that are doing the support services? We are all learning here, right? And so kind of what do you think is missing from wraparound supports and how can we do better?
I think one thing that kind of depending on what the service is, right, and what the provider is that we have people, especially being partnered with lane workforce partnerships and the STEP program and different things like that, and trying to get people to clear clinics and things, is understand that many of the people that are going to come in are trying to have 1 ounce of hope, and they're being willing to participate, but they probably have a really deep belief system that it's not going to happen for them. They've been denied many of times. They've had a lot of trauma around abandonment, rejection, and different things like that. So try to be a little bit patient and understanding. Also, we've talked to about the environment. Many people that are just as involved don't like people behind them, big crowds in the waiting room. Like, what does that look like for them? Sometimes it can be really triggering when they walk in and somebody starts asking them just like a bunch of questions. Like, try to build a little bit more rapport, be more personalized with them to kind of identify. I in Coffee Creek, as a peer wellness specialist, I held a caseload, and a lot of those young women really didn't know where their voice was or how to speak for themselves. And so they were just unable to communicate really what their needs were. And so trying to have a more like conversation based, not like a clinician type interview with like what the services are. We try to like just be kind of casual. I always say, I'm sort of like a translator, right? I can talk out here in all these forums, but when I'm with my clients, I'm in a much, much different language, so to speak, and just trying my best to make it as comfortable as possible so that they invest. If read the body language, if they look fearful, if they're hesitant, if they're a little bit unclear on what they need, how do we kind of get back that? And if possible, are they able to have an advocate or support person with them, especially in the beginning? Because those have been key pieces as well to get their needs met. The reentry coordinators, in full transparency, we have people in positions that have been in those positions for a very long time. And I think a lot of them still have that kind of older mentality of what the Department of Corrections and the punitive and kind of like, oh, that's out of my scope. But if you're a reentry coordinator, your scope is to build a safety plan. Your scope is to case manage. Your scope should be to provide wraparound services. I just worked the reentry simulation last month and was able to speak about my reentry. And the one thing that I was able to do within the transition department with my release counselor and some of the other members of the team that I was, had just built rapport with, basically, at the end of the day. They allowed me a Teams meeting with my parole officer, my employer, my mentor from the community, the actual transition coordinator, and I had a DHS case, so my DHS case manager. And I was able to, at 45 days to release, put all of those people together and say, okay, what do I need to do? Who expects what? It helped them because it was 15 minutes of their day, and the DHS caseworker is now, well, if the parole officer is going to make you do that, then I'm not going to make you do that. You know what I mean? And so we were able to case plan, and the relief that gave me when I walked out the gate, that everybody was in collaboration and knowing what I was doing, eliminated 3 appointments I would have had to do in the first week and not knowing where the office was or how I was going to get there, or what my schedule looked like, or any of those things. Mm-hmm. And that's the fear that we see when people walk out and it becomes defeating and they want to give up. And so I'm asking the Department of Corrections, like, offer these to everybody. How do we case manage for these people, relieve that fear, and also eliminate some of the things that from the professionals that have overwhelming number of caseload, to know that person is supported in another office or whatever that looks like, but now they can have partnership as well too. And so it's just helpful for everybody. The communication is lacking, throughout. We're all in like one little bubble and nobody wants to talk to anybody. Right. But it's critical. It's critical for success.
Removing the silos. Removing the silos and trying to work together as a team, and understanding that we all fit into the puzzle piece of life. And just because this is your role and that is your role does not mean that we can't kind of cross promote and cross collaborate and things like that. Taryn, what are your thoughts?
That's so interesting, what Michelle was saying about the team of people coming together. They do that for juveniles. It's a multidisciplinary team that gets together and helps them plan for reentry. If the school is there, if they're on an IEP, the special ed director or teacher is there, family members are there, different community members, different parole officers. I don't know why we're not doing that for adults. I imagine it's that we're so focused on the punitive nature, and we still think juveniles can change. For some reason that cuts off at 18, apparently. But so I love what Michelle said, and I wish we could expand that to adults as well. I also, what Michelle touched on is being trauma informed. It's, if you haven't experienced trauma, which seems, I don't, won't go there. So if you don't know what trauma does to someone, it's important to learn and to adjust how you work with someone, and also to be judgment free. A lot of the folks working in these roles are not necessarily people with lived experience, and so they don't understand different survival skills that might exist. When we, for example, have arranged a safe ride for a woman and our volunteer shows up and two other rides that she's arranged show up, that's inconvenient. But you know what? She's doing that because in the past people haven't shown up and she's got to cover all her bases. And there's no judgment for that. Okay, cool. That's awesome. You have a bigger support system. So nice. How can we continue to add to that? If she's asking for services beyond what we offer, it's not because she's greedy or trying to work the system. She's surviving. She's surviving and she's desperate. We don't we don't need to offer judgment. We need to offer grace and consistency and build trust and build rapport, like Michelle was saying as well.
My husband has been out for 11 years and he still does not sit with his back to an open door. Every restaurant, every place we're ever in, he's always got to have his back to a wall. It's just one of those things that I have long accepted from him, and that's fine. We actually have a little bit of a running joke about it. I was like, great. So someone comes in, I'm the first to go. Like, cool. Awesome. Sally, your thoughts on it?
I would say just piggybacking on kind of what Michelle was saying in the beginning, I think it's easy to say no, and when someone comes in with maybe a tough circumstance, it's easy to be like, well, there's not a lot that can be done, which loses hope. And I think it's really important to use other partnerships. So to be open-minded. So if talking to other providers when handling situations, I feel as though if you're not able to do something, there's a really big likelihood that someone else within just a resource or other community partners that you may have could help with that situation. So I think that's really important instead of just being like, well, no, this is actually what I do, and so I'm not able to do that. Being there to find the resource and give the resource is important to me.
We do get a little territorial in our
Yeah.
sandbox. And there are times where I'm like, can we just all play in the sandbox together? Just like, please. I understand, like, I can't at Clean Slate. There are times that individuals come through and I'm like, they can't come on a Monday. And I said, well, the Clear Clinic is on Fridays. Absolutely go to the Clear Clinic because that opportunity is there, or be in Salem for their clinics. Like, I will share those resources. What's one more individual to go to one other clinic? I don't need to keep that as my data point, right? I would much
Yeah.
rather the individual just get help.
It's all for the greater good and the
Mhm.
mission and so that's what, yeah.
Chris, do you have perspective on this? I know you're on the other side of things, so I would love to hear your perspective on some of this and what you think we could be all doing better on our end. You're on mute. I can probably.
Obviously, I'm not a coordinator, but just from the law enforcement side, Taryn mentioning that women's facility they're looking to open in Wilsonville. I love that idea because, whether it's prison or jail, especially, I deal more with jail than prison naturally. So just from like the jail side of things, you got to think there's people who are released in the middle of the night, all times of day, and without something in place like what Taryn was mentioning that they're trying to open, those people are just back to the streets, back to the same lifestyle that they were living before, going and relying on the same people that they were relying on before in the streets. I've asked homeless folks before, like, you have a nice camp. Why do you share it? Or, why do you tell people about it? You could have stayed here under the radar. No one would have found it. And they get to the point where they feel like they need to help each other. So they're leaning on each other in the streets. And if someone's just been released from jail and they have nowhere else to go, they're just going to go right back to what they were leaning on before. But that's also where all of the drugs and the alcohol and the crime is. So I love that idea of a facility, I guess reentry type facility being available, but we know the barriers to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, this question actually is for you, Chris. You're honestly on the other side of the reentry work, right? You are in the weeds of law enforcement, and you see people, come through at the lowest points of their lives. But you're also doing work on the other side of things with Shelby and some of the individuals. And so, you know, kind of how did that all come about? And from what your perspective and kind of the entire system, what is the work that you are doing with Shelby, and kind of how, and some of the other stories that you have, and what are the reasonings behind that, given the two sides of the coin that you work with?
Okay. We might have to break that down into
Totally fine. Take your time.
there, but would you want me to start off with just kind of a quicker story of
Sure.
Shelby and what happened?
Absolutely.
So gosh, this is going on probably 8 years ago. Time flies, factoring COVID and everything into it. But probably about 2 years before COVID started, I was just doing a regular patrol. I used to be part of a program where we kind of focused on houses in the community that could become a problem, whether it's a squatter house, that's a common term these days, or places like that, residents that could use some attention. So Shelby's had a home. Little backstory: the home was left to him when his parents passed, and at the time that happened, he was someone that was active in the community and whatnot, but he became addicted to meth, and the downward spiral from that. He got to a point where he didn't want to live that lifestyle anymore, and so he holed himself up in that house. But with no money or whatnot, the house became run down. He didn't have any utilities. He had a above ground pool in his backyard. He used that pool to flush his toilet for over a year's time, but after some time, the pool didn't have water anymore, so then he couldn't even flush his toilet. Naturally, I learned this after meeting him, but so seeing the condition of his home, I knocked on his door one day. He opened it, and the first several times we talked, I talked to him through a crack through the door, because naturally, me knocking on his door in uniform was probably alarming to him. Not the first person he would want to talk to in his situation. But I slowly gained his trust. I visited his home a handful of times before I gained his trust, but just reiterated to him that I could see that he was a person who needed some kind of help. At the time, we had a small program called LEAD. It was Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. And that was kind of focused on the 82 side over near the mall, around transient crime and the everyday lower level crime that would happen around the 82 and McLaughlin area. So I was able to, again, gain his trust and get him over to an individual that provided those services to him. Very slow road. The steps came very incrementally and slowly. But ultimately, he trusted me and the other individual that I got him linked up with. The first issue was to change the condition of his home. I could have technically shut his home down as a condemned building just due to the lack of running water. Got his utilities turned on, got some appliances replaced that weren't working any longer, and just got him kind of living again, other than kind of like an animal out in the elements. Because I mean, again, the house was run down, no heat, no nothing. I think the roof was leaking, so a lot of disrepair. Also, along with that, he had some pretty severe health issues that were very severe, to the point of involving his health dramatically, just to put it lightly. So we were able to get that going again too. And in the midst of all of that in his lifestyle, he was also on the verge of committing suicide. So he credits me with saving his life, whether here nor there, whatever. Um, but he was off and running at that point. We had him involved in services. Things were looking up for him personally at his home because now he wasn't just living in a shack with no utilities. And we just continued with the steps, trying to figure out what he wanted to do next. And he wanted to go back to school. So we got him enrolled into some college courses. That was going well. Shelby was definitely the type person who needed in-person education. And then COVID hit. And that was, I mean, a hurdle for everyone, but that was a huge hurdle for him because of the fact that he needed that one-on-one interaction with someone, and he wasn't getting it then. And so naturally, his schooling suffered from that. He stopped going, and he kind of fell into this point where I could kind of sense some helplessness with him, and wanting to get into the job market since schooling wasn't working, and then him expressing his frustrations with me. I just started Googling and trying to look things up, and that's when I ran into Amanda.
Found me.
And Clear Slate. And like magic, we were able to get him involved with that, and really things started to turn around because we were to take advantage of expungements and take care of some fines and make him look a lot more presentable for the job market as far as resumes are concerned, because he wasn't even getting a look. He was failing background checks, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel for him. So all of those steps really put him back into wanting to live again. And I'd say currently I still obviously have a relationship with him. He's still kind of in that circle of trying to get the job thing going. Here recently with some programs you've shared with me, Amanda, he's showed some interest in schooling again. But as you guys know, it's very tough to keep them on task. Even just the schooling, once he was in it, it's ideas and I want to do this and I want to do that, and just to keep him motivated and on task is difficult. So this most recent acknowledgement of the programs that are starting has been helpful, I think, in getting him remotivated, because I was getting a little worried there for a while because it seemed like he had become a little stagnant.
Yeah.
So
I remember Shelby coming in. He was skeptical of us too, but most people are at expungement. Like we've all kind of said it a little bit. They've been told no their entire lives. There has been this kind of repeated theme of no, you cannot leave. No, you did wrong. No, 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 no. And then they come to clean slate and we're like, yes, actually you are eligible. We are going to seal your record. And there's people going, I'm sorry, what now? And so at the end of it, there's a lot of tears. People tend to cry because they've been, they've had this kind of build up to come through clinic, and then they get to checkout and I take their paperwork from them and I say, okay, we're going to file this for you. Reach out in about 4 months. In theory, everything's going to be great. And they just burst into tears. And so it is that kind of full circle moment of, they came in very skeptical and left so much lighter.
Yeah, you don't realize how far removed they are from just the everyday practice of things. There was more, I'd taken him out to lunch several times, and I could just see his social awkwardness because he holed himself in a house for 3 years, so he had no human contact. So and I could tell that first time he answered the door, he literally was like a stray cat, afraid to take a piece of food out of someone's hand. But knowing that the anxiety that he has and whatnot really made it obvious to me that for him to just come down to a building where services are available and just to start asking for things or to express what he needs is pretty difficult for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does anybody else have any comments along those lines to follow up at all?
I think it's really beautiful that you kept going back. You saw the humanity and you saw him as part of the community, and that's something that a lot of people are lacking. It does seem like once you see the humanity, you can't unsee it. and that's where change happens. Um, I, you also mentioned about keeping him on task, and what that says to me is that he finally had hope. And when somebody finally has hope, they get so many ideas and so excited, and it is hard to stay on task and figure out, what is realistic and to do just one thing at a time when you finally feel like I can do it. That is huge. I think that's beautiful. There's a song, I can't ever remember who sings it. I think it's called Somebody's Daughter. I probably have that wrong too, but he's just talking about a woman asking for spare change and saying basically what happened. This is somebody's daughter. This was somebody's best friend, somebody's first dance. Like, where did we get to a point in the community where she fell and nobody caught her? And
Yeah.
so you came along and you caught Shelby, and I think it's beautiful.
I think it's easy for us in law enforcement to get stuck in this rut, where we deal with the same kind of clientele a lot, and it's easy for us to almost like stamp the paper,
Mhm.
just another rotation of taking someone to jail, and then we go back and we just do it again and whatnot. And if I had anything to, kind of factoring back to the earlier questions, if I could express ideas or to law enforcement, it would be that compassion part, to remember that probably all of us has had a friend or a relative or close relative, distant relative that has had tough times through life and whatnot, and how easily it could happen to anyone. I mean,
Mhm.
look at opioid addiction. I mean, there's been countless people who were good people who had a legitimate injury who end up on an opioid, and then it just goes downhill from there. And they never saw that coming. So
Yeah, I gave a speech at a WIDA conference recently, and one of the questions I asked the room is, has anybody ever been broken the law? And anybody that didn't stand up, I was like, you're fibbing, because we've all literally broken the law. Like, we have all literally broken the law, one way or another, speeding, done something wrong, right? And it's just whether or not we got caught, right? And so that sliding door of, is it where we live? Is it, Wilsonville or Westland versus 82nd and Powell? Or is it, we just got lucky that day? I walked out of a Target one day with a box of diapers underneath a cart. I mean, that's theft, right? And the fact that my children were with me, well, okay, great. So then now I've, done trauma to my children too. Nobody said boo about it, right? Because they just didn't. So there is also that kind of, where you are at in life too is sometimes how we end up in trouble, and sometimes not, right? It's just the way the cookie crumbles. But yes, the opioids are a really big deal. That is an easy thing for anybody to fall through the cracks on.
I was just going to say, like, I really appreciate you sharing that. And what it brought me back to is that prior to my relapse and my going into Coffee Creek, I worked at Whitebird Crisis Center. And working the front rooms there, the biggest way to build rapport, and really like learn who each person was literally just by learning their name, smiling at them and saying good morning consistently. And when they needed clothing or hygiene or whatever it was, actually taking just the extra time to check sizes, making sure that the outfit matched, and really like, hey, look, I think that this is this, and giving them options. And then after that happened, they were more willing to share their story. And I consistently would hear, I don't want to be housed. I don't want your services. I just want to hang out and get warm and use the bathroom. And it took sometimes months for them to even share why that was their stance or what they were. And they were scared many times to be housed because it would get taken away. It would get taken away. And so they were choosing to live on the streets for years, many years, 10 plus years. And now not only were they scared it would get taken away if they got it, they no longer knew how to function with inside four walls. It was confining and it was scary. And I never would have had that perspective if we didn't build from those little pieces to build an ounce of trust for them to even share that. And then life happened for me, and I ended up on the other side of it. And I was like, okay, now I understand, because many of their solution to get out of the cold in winter was to commit crime and go do a short stint in jail, where they would be housed, clothed, and whatever for 30, 60, 90. And they had this like recipe down, for lack of better terminology, on how to get through the seasons. And it was remarkable, like to see somebody from that stance and then experience it and now be able to come out on this side of it and participate in these conversations. So I love that story about Shelby, and it really sparked some memories about some people here in Lane County as well.
And then Amanda, I guess the need, what's needed and what's missing is kind of the same thing. Just quickly, I would say the compassion and education. No, I'm not going to sit here and say that all cops, we have no compassion, but again, it's easy to get stuck in that rut of just checking the boxes of, okay, we have a shoplifter, to go down the checklist of how we handle that and go through the process. But what put them in that position to even do that in the first place?
Right.
Is it someone just needing some drug money, or is it a mom who needs, bottles and diapers and that type of thing? And then obviously the education, not being aware of some of the programs out there. I was unaware of Clean Slate until I stumbled upon it online and started talking with Amanda. So, we as law enforcement could do a better job at being aware of these, maybe communicating better with the available departments, so we're all more on the same page, kind of like what's happening today.
Yeah, we would love to see, instead of fines and fees, you were saying like the social awkwardness of things, well, instead of paying fines and fees that are outstanding, well, let's volunteer. Let's learn how to communicate one-on-one with somebody. Let's work in the community. Let's do job placement services. Let's have that count towards fines and fees than just fines and fees, right? So we're bettering the human. We were working that a little bit for a while there. Now fines and fee waivers are much more readily available in most counties, except Umatilla and Morrow counties, but we won't get into that. The most counties will forgive fines and fees, or at least reduce them for individuals that are really barriered. So, we're seeing that more and more, but also there's a push for individuals that just needing a chance, right? Needing an opportunity, needing a yes, not a no. Even a small yes, right? All right, so then my final question, and we've all kind of just discussed this a little bit, is does anybody want to share any kind of real life experiences or their stories, perspectives on just what you want to do? So we'll just do kind of like a quick wrap up on everybody's kind of work and what they do, and any real life information that they wanted to share. Michelle, you want to go first?
Well, as I shared my life experiences that I did and struggle with the disease of addiction, I'm a lifelong addict, born into that cycle. And primarily what I found out later in life is that I struggled with survivor's guilt after losing my brother at a very young age. And so there was just a lot of trauma being raised in a family that didn't believe in counseling or support systems. Grandfather was like Golden Glove boxer in the Navy, so it was very much in-house. Everything happened in-house. I was also raised by a single dad, and so I had a lot of what I know now to be sort of like what would be considered stereotypic male characteristics. And so I always held myself, I didn't share feelings, and ultimately imploded, so to speak, just like not knowing really what to do with my life. And so winding up, even though I have a 12 SID number and have been in and out of the system for a very long time, I didn't actually wind myself up incarcerated until I was 42 years old. And looking back, I realized that a lot of times it was because I was a single mom, because I presented well, because I didn't have a lot of the characteristics of some people that were in active addiction, as long as like living on the streets and violent crimes and different things like that, is I was awarded a lot of freedom, private attorneys, different things like that, coming from a family that just didn't want our name out there to be destroyed. But it also enabled me to stay very sick and become a manipulator. And so going into prison for the first time at 42 was the first time I was really just stopped in my tracks and was able to look at all those things, and I think that happens a lot. You have people suffering in all kinds of households, but unless there's like this string of experiences, or there's, whatever it looks like, right? There's a lot of judgment and stigma around it. A lot of that affects us later in life. So me going to prison at 42, having worked in the field, having had stints of sobriety, like bouncing back and forth between being this like good mom who worked really hard and doing all these things and having addiction in the back door, really reminded me that we're really just human in our core, and that trauma and not knowing how to cope with it affects in all different ways. And there's people that wind up there that have committed one major crime and it affected their whole life. And now our commonality is what we're wearing and how our daily lives have been affected, you know? And so at the end of the day, really that humanity and unity piece is like what my biggest takeaway and perspective is now. I no longer have that us and them. And that was another thing that I used to hear at Whitebird. You don't understand. You're not one of us. And so being vulnerable enough to share the fact that, yes, I am human and I have trauma and I have hurt. And I'm just asking for just 1 ounce of hope, right? Or even a willingness to allow me to just walk beside you or have a conversation with you for a day, has changed everything for not only me, but for the people I serve. The biggest joy that I get is when I'm in the facilities. Like yesterday, we were at Two Rivers and I stood with a group of lifers that were willing to share their story with me. But the difference this time is from the first time that I went in is that these guys have hope because they're seeing people get out. And so now they're leading groups and they're trying to change the culture within inside the facilities. And they're just asking for help from the administration to allow them to support other men. And so it's kind of even shifted my gears in like how to like push for that to happen inside and then come out. The other thing I see is it's definitely different from somebody that's releasing from a county jail and a prison. Obviously, we've done longer times if we're in prison, so we have more sobriety. We kind of have more. You see people going into jail for maybe 72 hours, releasing right back to the streets. If we don't have a deflection team or some sort of like support system that can scoop them at that, then yes, they become that revolving circle. I have clients that have been to, Lane County Jail 58 times, but they never did really any set time. So how do we get those people to continue to engage in services and support them when they don't have a place to go in those short time spans? And so those are the other gaps that we're looking at now, within our services here. And then working with Nancy at Opportunity Oregon, and employment, I came in and was like, okay, but we have to build foundation, right? And stepping stone jobs to get them to their gold job. Like we can't only provide employment to people. We're setting them up for failure at the end if we don't know that they have a place to take a shower and get dressed and clothed. So, expanding those type of services, it's very individualized. But I had to do the self-work to be able to identify and to be able to support and not take it on, because transference is another big thing for people in our field. And really making sure that we were able to separate and stay in that mindset. But the collaboration is key. Some of these big organizations don't even know about the tiny little ones that we're building. And we have the lived experience. We have the life. We know it happened. My biggest barrier was housing when I came home. But because I was in one of the groups that the Clear Clinic came into Coffee Creek and I was able to run my whole record, there were things on there I forgot. I didn't even know were there. And I walked out and my friend that picked me up handed me all this mail from the courts and my heart sunk, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Something else happened. And it was my entire record as like an 18 to 24-year-old had been set aside, including 2 evictions. And I was like, what? And so I was immediately sparked with hope and just continued, to build that. And so that's kind of like the next thing that I'm looking at is how do we support people too with the set aside clinics, because we don't always remember what's there.
No,
and you're just a file that people look at. There's a lot of judgment and stigma that can come with that.
We see a lot of people that are like, why is there 87 dismissed charges on my record? And I was like, well, they're if you were in cuffs, it's on there. I said, it's not just convictions. And I had a gentleman on Monday that was not happy with me because he said, I was not charged with these. And we're like, well, you were only convicted of these 2. And he was very upset with me. And I was like, I'm sorry, but we're going to seal them now. So it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and that's that education piece both ways with the people experiencing it and the entities that dictate how they move forward.
Yeah. Taryn, do you have final closing thoughts at all?
I have too many. Even when you first asked the question, I wasn't sure, but as Michelle talked, I was taking notes, listing off all the things that made me think of. When I first started going into facilities, well, way more than a decade ago, I remember um, thinking like, okay, I don't care what people have done unless it was this, or I won't work with somebody who identifies as this kind of hate group or has done this particular type of crime. And boy, does that get blown out of the water when you get to know people. That I mean, I can't say it enough. The humanity piece is so important, and the value of lived experience cannot be overstated. People with lived experience should always be in positions of leadership in groups that are trying to help folks impacted by the system. They should be decision makers. They should be leaders. They shouldn't be a token like yes, our organization has somebody directly impacted and look how good we are. That shouldn't in any way be how that works. We Michelle touched on short sentences, and that's something that we're very concerned about as well. Maybe it's a parole violation or for whatever reason, she's coming back to prison and serving just a few months. Well, those few months means she's lost her housing, she's lost her job, she might have lost her kids. She's in trouble over and over again, and it's a short enough time that she's not getting any services or support while she's inside. And I'm not in any way saying we should lengthen those sentences. I think it's the opposite. What is the point of putting somebody inside and ruining the little bit that she's built up just because, again, because we're mad at her
Well,
or
and the
afraid?
mistake that she made could have been a very simple one. Like you've been through reentry simulations, right?
Mhm.
A simple mistake of I have two different places that I need to be at once. Like, what's the choice? Show up to work on time or go to see my parole officer? Well, if I don't show up to work on time, I'm going to lose my job. But if I don't go to my parole officer, I'm going back to jail or I'm going back to prison, right? And so it's this like, let's roll the dice and, hope you don't get caught. And most of the time, it does not work out well.
That's
Just
it.
speaking to that really quickly, I would just say we saw such a huge increase in the transition department because I did all the spreadsheets and somebody coming back to Coffee Creek on intake and immediately be needing reentry, right? So that means that they only had 6 months or less. It made them ineligible for any services outside of reentry, but that means that they got no support to
Right.
do any sort of work, and we were already kicking them out. So they just sat at Coffee Creek for 6 months and released with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sally, do you have thoughts? Oh,
I wish
sorry,
those
Karen,
weren't,
you're not done.
sorry. I wish those weren't common examples, but they're really, really common examples. And if I could just add in one more thing that's
Mhm.
been on my mind lately is the focus on shame as a way to punish somebody into changing their lives, even what would be a seemingly small thing, like when somebody gets in trouble in Coffee Creek, if they're sent to the hole or whatever, they have to wear a neon green shirt for a set amount of time. Like, are scarlet letters out of stock now? Is that why we're wearing neon green shirts? Why does she have to walk around and make sure everybody knows that she made a mistake and she has to wear it for a set amount of time, like 10 days or 30 days or whatever it is? What is the point? And how does that help anybody
Mhm.
heal and rehabilitate or whatever terms we want to use? How does that change anything? It just makes things worse. So much of what we're doing just makes things worse. And I know that's a terrible note to end on, a very low note to end on, but I'll stop talking now.
You're
Well, I
fine. You're
th
totally fine. Sally, do you have
yeah.
thoughts?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point though, and that's why it's so important to have these conversations and to be able to like go forward with empathy. It's like this is how things are right now, and I just feel like at some point, I don't know how to say this, but it's like obviously the system is changing, but what has worked in the past, I don't think is necessarily working now. So I don't know. I think being hopeful and helping people with empathy and just kind of helping them put their best foot forward without, yeah, just being that person. Because sometimes people just need to have someone to listen. And I think that's really important. And it's not necessarily they're asking for a lot, but a lot of times they just haven't been listened to at all. And
Mhm.
so I think that is just something that's kind of my ending thought. It's like, I really have hope for just kind of where the direction we're going. But I think these kind of conversations are really important to have.
Mm-hmm. Chris, final thoughts?
I could easily say that my work with Shelby has been the most rewarding or meaningful thing that I've done in my career. And I just realized that I've been working with him or mentoring him, whatever word you want, friending him, for half my career now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been some time, and it's really taught me a lot as far as, every person in the reentry phase of life, has a story. And naturally, there are going to be those extremes on each side, but a lot of people in the middle do want the help and are just waiting for someone to come along to guide them in the direction they need to go. And really, it just took a little bit of compassion, like mentioned before, and using the resources available. I didn't have to do anything overly extraneous or anything to help him along. So yeah. And then I would also add, peers and mentors have been mentioned through this discussion. And I would say that, we have our behavior health unit folks that it's becoming more common for them to be attached to police departments, sheriff's offices. And those are, for lack of better terms, social workers who go out and help the folks with the mental health crisis and whatnot. And the peers and the mentor, the aspect of that has been huge. Having that person for the reentry person to relate to and be able to talk to, and just has been very helpful.
Reacting with a social worker versus an arrest, right? And so trying to keep them out of the system and get them help.
Correct.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, we turned lemons into lemonade on this, I will say. This turned out lovely. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for recording this. I'm going to stop now, and then we will